Good evening, guys. I'm going to be talking about Mum tonight. It's been a while. I thought I'd put together something because it's her birthday a few days ago. She was born 1930 March 1st, and she would be, what's that, 92? 92 years old if she was alive, but she died in 1995 at 65 years old. So unfortunately, cancer got her, but I thought I've been wanting to talk about her life as as a kid in Hungary and experiences or some of the stories that she used to tell us about Hungary and and her life in Australia. Yeah, just summarise it to have it documented. Be interesting for some people, I guess. It'll probably help me to later to look back and remember some of the stories as I get older. But basically, yeah, she was born in 1930, so that was just 10 years after World War Two. Sorry, World War One, and she actually would have lived at that period where they had to rebuild the country because it was just 10 years after the Treaty of Trianon, where Hungary lost like um, 2/3 of their land. So um, you'd have to rebuild the whole country, and so there was a lot of hardship in Europe at the time. But at least she would have experienced like at least 10, 15 years of living in a country before communism. So she was able to compare the two because communism started when the Soviets came in 45, but their laws took about 2 or 3 years to come in and to see the real ugly side of it when they started persecuting all the priests, taking people, dragging them off to prison, and all the horrors that go with Soviet and communism. So where they just wipe out all our intellectuals, our politicians, put in all puppet leaders, replace our teachers, universities. Actually, I only found out after 1945 because they had destroyed so many intellectuals and replaced all the teachers. For 10 years, approximately, the universities couldn't teach because they didn't have any qualified professors to teach in a lot of fields. They were vacant until they replaced them. Um, and Budapest is full of universities. Yeah, that's why a lot of international students come here. Even now, they're very high standard of universities in law, medicine, engineering, and agriculture, all kinds, all categories. Yeah, so mum was born 1930, period of, geez, that would have been even just after the Great Depression. So, but Budapest was Pearl of the East, Central Europe, and had had some beautiful Baroque style buildings from the period of um, Habsburg, Hungarian, Austro-Hungarian Empire. That would be the period just after that. So it had a beautiful architecture through Budapest because World War One, the front, we weren't occupied, like they didn't bomb the cities or anything, because even after World War One, even our front were all outside our original borders. So when we surrendered and put our arms down, that's when we had the Czechs, Romanians, Serbs, everybody just rush in while we had disarmed. So they just came in, stole everything, and especially the Czechs, Serbs, and Romanians. Romanians were really bad too. They ended up truckloads just trying to empty out all our museums, churches, all our buildings, and actually one of the American officers saw. He's actually got a statue there in Sobotsharked or Freedom Square, where he was the one who saw the looting and stopped it. He ended up stopping it because but obviously by the time he got around to getting it done, he was just appalled at the what was going on. And actually Turkey at the time surrendered as well, and but they didn't put their arms down because and then afterwards a lot of people don't realise after World War One the fighting continued because all the Allied forces wanted to go into Turkey and occupy it like they did in Hungary, but they picked their arms up and continued fighting for their sovereignty. And they claim if Hungary would have done the same, if they wouldn't have put their arms down, we had a strong army still back then, and we could have easily beat back all our enemies because that was the only thing that stopped us because our arms. And the back then the even Tisa István, he was the Prime Minister then. He ended up telling international forces at the time that he didn't even want to go into World War One. He had told all the Axis forces at the time that it's going to be detrimental long term, but we were forced into it. It wasn't us who started the World War One. It was started down in when they were assassinated. And they assassinated the Austrian king. So then it started. Against the Serbs, etc. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, Mum would have had to live after that period and up to Second World War and even the uprising in 1956 against the Soviets. So yeah, a lot of people who live in the West have never experienced that kind of life, and for them to keep their wits about them and stability, God, I really take my hat off to how they would have been able to maintain a life after seeing so much horror and death and struggle. Anyway, Mum also enjoyed as a kid. I'll get back to her childhood. She used to talk about my education was quite like theatre. She used to like be in plays. She was really good at ping pong, table tennis. She had a bronze medal in the country for ping pong championships in the division, and she also liked back then they would have had the swing jazz period starting, so the dancing, and Budapest was a beautiful city, still is, and most of her main haunts or places to frequent was the Galliet, but they call it Galliet Hotel, and it's got these beautiful thermal baths within the building, and at the back they got a pool. And it was actually the first wave pool back at the period where they had this setup where the pool made waves. They'd ring a bell and people go in and catch waves as they went swimming, you know. Then it went for, I don't know, a few minutes, and then 10 minutes or so, and then it become calm again. So as soon as you heard the bell, people jump in the water and wait for the waves to come. But at the same time, it was kind of nice because you can get a drink around there. It was really nicely decorated. Back then, the architecture and design was so much more detailed and artistic than what you see today. Today is just all very simplistic or industrial. I don't know. I don't even call it. It's very, very grey and sad what you see today. But they also called Budapest a city, garden city, because it had a lot of trees and beautiful walkways. You got the Margaret Island as well, where they had pools and thermal baths. And a lot of the country, we got thermal baths. Because the whole Carpathian Basin has got different quality, different minerals throughout the country too. So some thermal baths are better for different parts of the organs internally, or your skin, or your joints. So yeah, there's a whole list of chemicals that are very therapeutic. A lot of people travel here to get better. They come for the wellness centres. Even down there on Lake Bolaton, where is it? Bolaton Foodad. They have a heart clinic. So even the water there is supposed to be, you drink it, it's very good for your heart. So a lot of people with heart issues go there for treatment, wellness. Actually, I spotted really became popular with a lot of Germans at the time. I remember seeing a lot of people in those areas, because they're the main tourists that used to come back during that period of the Iron Curtain and even after, because there's a lot of Schwabs as well that live through the country, Schwab villages. So we have quite a few German speaking and towns and villages throughout the country in different pockets. So, and good wine regions too, actually. And this wine I actually got for Christmas. Matthew, this is like a cuvee, really nice. It's Matthew bought me 6 bottles, and one of them were these. It's really nice. It's a Bolaton. It's a cuvee, 3 white wines, lots Riesling. Lots Riesling, Sitko Borat, and another grape I don't remember now, but it's got a nice colour. And it's also oak. You can smell the oak on it. Taste it. So yeah. So where was I? Yeah. Okay, getting back to the bars in Budapest. And also Budapest has got a Buda side and a Pest side. And Mum actually lived on a place in Medvedutca, Chikbadance school, I think, where she got brought up. Because my grandfather was in World War One, was in on the front, Italian front with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And he ended up because getting frostbite on one of his toes. And I remember as a kid too, he had early toes. And after that, he got like a war pension, and he became I remember it was some kind of a fitter, fitting or locksmith, something like that was his trade. But he became a janitor at one of the schools, and he got a war pension as well after, because of the injuries he got. And so they got residence in the school. It was at Medvedutca in 2nd District, I think it is. And it's funny, when I was first came to Hungary, when I first came to, because I came in 91, but when I moved to Hungary in 2006, I wanted to find the street, where she had lived in the school. And I had this map, and just a little, on your tourist maps. And I was walking along the whole Buda side up from Chain Bridge, between all these little streets everywhere. And I was really exhausted. And I thought, geez, where is this street, And then I sat down right in front of this church, which it turned out, well, my mum actually got frequented. Not Borgio Boston Templum there. And as I sat down, I just felt all this just all re-energized. And anyway, while I sat down, I grabbed this the map. Wow, I looked on the map, I go, okay, here's the church, it was a landmark, and then around the corner, just one street away was a street, right from the church. I thought, wow, that's cool. So, yeah, after that, it was like I was re-energized, and I went down the street, and it was a really nice street. The school had been renovated, and she even used to tell me that when she used to go home from, because they even had a synagogue there, where the Jewish people used to frequent, and a few of them used to live around that area too. And, and on a Saturday, they have the Sabbath where they're not allowed to do any kind of work. So she used to come home. On her way home, she'd get stopped, and they'd try and stop her to clean the chicken or do some kind of work, and she'd go, no way, and then she'd run home because they used to harass her because to do, it was just, I remember her telling that story. She used to be, and they used to, I don't know, it was back then, I guess, when you're a kid, they used to wear, that black, they used to wear a black and white suit with their hat and long beards, so they would have been pretty intimidating for a kid, to see. Anyway, so I remember her saying there was a synagogue around the area, but I didn't find, not that I was looking for it, but I didn't actually, maybe it was demolished because they had a lot of new buildings there along that street. It might have been there in some spot. Sometimes when a building is demolished, like churches or synagogues, they'll put a plaque like on the road or a little plaque somewhere saying, oh, here's through this church, but now another building, because they've got a lot of office building and apartments down that way. And that area would have been absolutely bombed to crap out of during World War II, because that's where the Hungarians, that was the last stand before they called it the Citadel break, or Citadella. It was like, the last bastion before the Soviets, and they pulled themselves up into the Buddha Castle, because the whole Buddha Castle underneath it is full of caves, and like heaps of caves, and the army could hide in there and against a bombardment. So that was like a natural fortress, and all of that surrounding buildings would have been bombed the crap out of. And they said Hungary was like the second Stalingrad, because all the street battles and that went on was just horrendous. So yeah, it was a bloody street battles that went on, and that was the last. And it's interesting, even learning the history, which they didn't teach, because Soviets obviously taught their own version, and you weren't allowed to anybody who, they just rewrote our history. And a lot of those guys who broke out during the breakout, there had two kind of waves that soldiers, German and Hungarian soldiers, they wanted to catch up with the front that had moved up, towards Austria. And the first batch, a few hundred escaped, 700 or something, and then I don't know, I'm not sure how many got across, but in a few hundreds they got across in the first group that left. Then the Soviets realised that they had broken through, and they had really fortified that area down at Mamut, where they had the Mamut shopping centre. There's a tram, and they claim the second wave. They knew that second wave that broke out from all the officers and army dressed up in their officer uniforms and best uniform, because they knew majority aren't going to make it. So they said they're going to go out in honour, because they didn't want to become prisoners, because they knew that they would be executed or go to the gulags of Siberia. And there were horror stories, and they don't talk about them. Talk about all the other prison camps that the Germans had, but they don't talk about the Russian camps or the Soviet disgusting. And even the Hungarian communists who had camps here in a lot of parts of like eastern Hungary. They had a lot of around Agad and Hortobágy. They had all these work camps where they took a lot of people prisoner, or gulags they call them. So the second wave broke out, and it was around between 30,000 of soldiers and people and all that broke out, and they claim only 100 and they were waiting all along with machine guns and tanks down the bottom of where the shopping centre is there now, and they claim they just mowed them down, and then they mowed them all down, and then afterwards they left their bodies. They dug 10 trenches, all under where the tram line goes. There's around 28,000 people buried just underneath that tram line, and nobody. And whoever spoke about it or tried to do a memorial, they were dragged off to get beaten or prisoned. So even history, they don't teach it properly anymore. They don't teach that it was there. So it's pretty horrendous what went on at that time. And then when the Soviets came in, Mum would have been, it's 1930, so that would have been sure 15. They had the big rape too. They were raping all the women. 2 million women got raped in Hungary. I mean Europe, sorry. When the Soviets came in, and the girls had to be hidden from the soldiers because Stalin gave the order, to put the Slav seed to us, and a lot of women got pregnant, and because they were Catholic, there was a generation of kids who didn't know their fathers, and then they had to struggle with they were even the stupid communists that took over. They used to call them whores as if the women were they actually wanted to be raped. That's how sick. Even I remember not long ago hearing because they still got a lot of communists, the old generation who support that stupid regime, and they had a group of guys being interviewed, they would have been in their 70s or a bit older, going, oh, the Hungarian women wanted it, they couldn't wait to get have that experience. This is how sick, absolutely sick and heartbreaking it is to hear that kind of stuff still today. And you think, geez, you want to really smack them in the head, but then you think, what's the point? They're so sick in the head. They're going to be punished in hell for even the punishment. The way they act and think, they're gonna suffer. I guarantee. They're gonna suffer. So let them have their little bit of fun between heaven and hell, and they're definitely gonna have consequences for their actions. So yeah, when the Soviets came in, they took Mum and Mum's house or apartment it would have been. They claimed my grandfather, when they came into the house, they kicked the doors in, and there was still, because what they used to do is grab someone. They come into your apartment, grab someone from the building, and then they push my grandfather with gunpoint around the corners of all the rooms in the whole building, because that way he'd be the first one shot. And then once they knew the building was clear, then they'd send the guy back to his room, Luckily, there were no German soldiers in the building at the time. And then if they saw someone with German army boots, because a lot of times the soldiers might get into civilian clothing and forget their boots, with German. So they try to identify German boots on someone. They just, no question, just drag you off, either shoot you or throw you in a prison camp. They wouldn't hesitate. they just wouldn't hesitate to do that. And yeah, they came, the mum claims they came in, they kicked over the tables. They didn't even know what a toilet looked like. Because a lot of them didn't have toilets. You know, and then they even threw their feet up on the table, ate everything, and then moved on. But I'm sure they even had to hide mum because, yeah, she would have got raped. And I remember hearing some chit-chatter when I was a kid about it, but I was, and they may have even done something, but I can't, because the women back then weren't, they would have been too ashamed to talk about it, so it may have even, something would have happened, so, but I don't know. I just had the feeling that they were keeping it from us kids, you know. But my dad's side, my auntie and my grandmother got raped by the Soviets when they're coming through southern Hungary. And so I told you that story in my dad's video. So anyway, they came in and then around 10 years passed, you know, because that was 45 and something like that. And then they rounded up all the, over those 10 years before the 56 revolution came, people really saw the ugly side of what Soviet communism and who were put in place of all our leaders. A lot of priests were rounded up, nuns. They took over all our schooling and turned them into like government school or Soviet schools and communist schools. But the thing is, I didn't realise Hungarians had a lot of faith. You know, they were Catholics, and so they had to be kind of. That's why it took them a while before the Hungarians hit back, because they kind of tolerated, because they never experienced communism before, so they had to put up with the propaganda. And by the time the '56 revolution broke out, you know, had to kind of build a network up. But anyway, 56 revolutions could talk about that. There's a lot of things about that the average person doesn't know. Actually, it shouldn't be even called revolution. It's 56 uprising. It should be called, because revolution is something that the communists use. But uprising, a people's uprising, is something that is grassrooted. So Mum ended up yeah, Mum and the family already started feeling the pressure earlier, and but anyway, before I get on that, Mum, I was also talking about Mum's Mum used to love going to I think before World War II, used to have a lot of these no, sorry, it would have been after World War II, but she was too young to go out. In her 20s, she was obviously started going out to dance halls and stuff. She had her own hat maker, shoemaker, dressmaker, tailor, I guess. And they used to go down to Margaret Island, I said earlier, for walks. And Buddha Castle would have been beautiful too. That would have been nearby. Széchenyi Föld Bars was really nice too. The parks and the main streets road, Andrássy út, that led up to the park, to Városliget, or the central park there, is really nice. And yeah, it's beautiful gardens and trees all the way. If you even look at the old photos of that period, trees everywhere. It's really nice city. So she ended up going, and this obviously she was very attractive. I'll put up some photos on the front, and you'll see. And she remember this guy caught her eye. He was Kuchar, Charles Scorchi Kuchar, and she started. He was my mum's first husband. They got married, and then obviously the pressure of the Soviet occupation and the communism started building, and they wanted to escape Hungary. So they planned an escape. It was my my mum had, I should have even said that earlier. She had a Uncle Michael, Pichu, another guy, I can't remember his name actually. He died as a pilot in World War II on the front, on the Russian front. He shot down. And then there was Julivachi, that's Julius, who was the youngest. Mishka, he was a professional boxer. He actually, yeah, he was cool. Went to Australia, French Revolution, French Foreign Legion. He was part of, and he was also was boxing next to Pop Laszlo, Poplotzi they call him, who won 3 gold medals at the Olympics, and was a really wicked boxer. And again, he was always, because of the Soviets didn't let him travel out of the country, he was always really peeved off that he couldn't go for international, boxing as a professional boxer because they wouldn't allow him to leave the country. He used to go out to Austria, but then back again, But Austria was still not free from the Iron Curtain. It was kind of in the making of it. So, but he was good. Anyway, my Uncle Michael, he escaped with the Germans, so he was already out of the country after World War II, and then he was in the Foreign Legion. Then he ended up in Australia and started boxing there. And he's got a professional boxing record too. They call him Hungarian whirlwind or hurricane because he was so fast. And he used to knock the guys out first, second round. Pretty cool. He's got his record too. If you go to the boxing, you can find Keresztes Mike. You can find that. I think it's somewhere on the Australian Boxing Federation. You can find his records. But he found the discrimination there too, because they didn't like a WOG beating up Aussie guys, because they had a lot of the festival hall. They even said to him, look, if you want to make money, you got to start losing fights. And he wasn't stupid. He reckons at the end, this is a rumour is anyway, he reckons at the end some of his fights he did lose, and they paid him big. So there's corruption in boxing, definitely. But his last fight, which he gave up his career, he reckons this guy, he knocked 3 or 4 times out. He knocked this guy out, and this guy just kept getting up and coming back here. Big heart. This guy, he just didn't. And Uncle Mike just combination, bang, 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 knocked him down. And back then they didn't stop fights, 15 rounds. And so they took him. The guy ended up, obviously, Uncle Mike won the fight, but that night the guy had to go to hospital. He ended up having a blood clot into his brain, and then ended up dying a few days later. And Uncle Mike was devastated. And I remember as kids, we weren't even allowed to ask him questions about boxing. Only later in his career, I used to get all the information off my parents, my mum, dad, and other people that knew him. Because Uncle Mike, you weren't allowed to ask him because he was traumatised by the fact that he had killed someone. And he gave a lot of his money he gave to the family, and he just felt. But later you can see when Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson started getting into the game, he started loosening up, and then you were about to talk about some of the, not really about his career, but just about boxing in general. Tippy-toed around the questions, so that was cool. But he even taught some kickboxers up at around Caloundra, because he moved up there to Biwa. So he that's alligator. I mean, that's where the crocodile zoo, Australia Zoo is. He was just around the corner from it, his house. back then it was Irwin was still really a nobody until after, when he died, he got really famous. The Americans made him famous. Steve Irwin, I think his name was. Yeah. Anyway, back to Mum. So they already started feeling the pressure of 56 coming, the uprising, and in 52 they planned to escape. And so the whole family, even my mum's first husband, Charles, or Kucha, and my grandparents, Julius, youngest brother, he was a boxer as well. He won Golden Glove boxing in Hungary for his division. And yeah, so there was that group. And I think there were a few other people with the group going as well. And as they were going out, they had a guide, and Charles even had a pistol on him, in case they got into trouble. But as they got closer to the border, Julius, he was the youngest, he started getting hunger pains, and during the hunger pains, every time they went past a village, he said, "Oh, let's go into the tavern and get something to eat," And Charles, who was a bit older, he said, "No, we can't, because they're full of informers, and you don't know, we don't know who's there, and they can quickly identify us." Eventually, he got that stubborn. He said, "No, I'm next tavern. I'm going in to get something to eat." And and Mum said, "No, you don't go, And then he goes, "Oh, look, if you go, I'll go in with you, and then we'll bring some food back out, And then as they went in, they sat down in the tavern, and the waiter came out. They very good service back then. Came out, they give you a thingo, you order your drinks, and then waiter got the order, went out away, and then they thought everyone's fine, And then next minute, they see this guy in the corner, reading a newspaper, his hat kind of down, reading the paper, and he tips his hat, puts his newspaper down, walks over. He goes, "Hi, how are you guys?" He goes, "Where are you guys from?" And then straight away, the guy ended up being an informer, undercover, to catch people escaping. And then he quickly called more support, and they rounded up because the rest of them stayed out in the cornfields, and after time they realised that they must have been caught. So Charles actually knew if he would have been caught with a pistol, he would have been got in trouble. They would have executed him, or because you're not allowed to have pistols. So he quickly disposed of the pistol somewhere in a creek or pond or somewhere. And then they came out. They rounded them up, and then they went to they had to go to court, for it. And then Charles, he got 5 years prison because they found some kind of political connection with him, and he had to do a lot of rebuilding in the city, because back then they were still rebuilding Budapest, so all the roads, and he even said that he had to remove how they call it, mines, the bombs that, like in the rubble, that didn't go off. So as they dug them up, they had to defuse the bombs, do that. That was their job. So yeah, and then it was heavy work. But Mum, they put in a prison too, and my grandmother in the women's section, and and while they were there for 3 years, and Mum even said it would have been 52 or 53 they would have got in, because Stalin had just died, and the whole prison had to stand, everyone had to stand a minute's silence to the death of Stalin. So that would have been I think 52, 53 Stalin died. So it was around 52 when Mum and that first escaped. But Mum also has a few stories about prison, how they had to do all sewing and all kinds of labour there too. Um, and they even had to go out in gangs and clean up the streets and stuff, like sweeping, street sweeping and all that kind of stuff. They used to go out and then be held. I mean, there would have been prison, like work gangs and cleaning up the city. Um, she even said there was this lady a woman in the prison that was obsessed with her. She ended up being a lesbian, and she was trying to corner in the showers everywhere around the place, and she found it very difficult to get away from her. So this is back then. She was getting harassed, and the other women, my grandmother and I had to always keep an eye and protect her from this. And she was that obsessed with my mother that she even said, oh, I want to commit suicide if I can't be with you. So yeah, they reckon it was really, really bad, and Mum was horrified, that she was cornered by this lesbian in prison. So anyway, that was in prison, and then Mum got out of prison 3 years later, and she got a job because they couldn't get jobs like. They were kind of even penalised them afterwards. They couldn't get their proper. They gave them shitty jobs like around the city and stuff. So she ended up just working in a cafe in the Royal Hotel, in a coffee shop, cake shop section. But she actually enjoyed it. She said because they always had music in there. It was a 5-star hotel, beautiful hotel, and you had a lot of like well-dressed people coming in. It was very conservative. So she enjoyed that side of it to a point. And then, but obviously the pressure still mounted, around the country because of the communism. And then the revolution broke out, 56 revolution, and Charles was still in prison back then. And then when the 56 revolution broke out, that's when prisoners got out of prison, and then a lot of them went to how do they call it? A lot of them were what's the word I'm thinking of? Well, yeah, a lot of them got out and then they served for the revolution or the uprising. I keep saying revolution, I should call it uprising. So, yeah, it broke out. And Mum said, I remember walking on the streets and they tried, because they tried to cover the bodies, because it would have been around October, it broke out, and that's still pretty cool. Part of it was a cold. Winter started quite early then. It was pretty cool by then, and they were. She said that a lot of times they cover the bodies with newspapers until they came around to collect the bodies, and then you'd be walking on the street and on a windy while you're walking down, all the bodies the newspaper would blow off the bodies and you see the dead faces and that as you're walking home, because a lot of people still, while the revolution or uprising was going on, a lot of people still attended work and that while all the chaos was happening around the city. So it wasn't like lockdown, everybody's like a martial law. No, people were still, and they had boxes like set up, it was like a box set up on the road where people would just throw money in to help anybody that needed it. So they had boxes full of money where people in need, like really needed it, they'd help with this donations. So it was this set up like that. And then obviously the revolution broke out, and then they saw the chaos, and then they planned again to escape. But this time they paid this guy that was supposed to be a better, more reassuring to get them out of the country. And then he got my grandparents, my mum escaped. Charles said, look, he's going to stay, but he ended up staying. And mum and that left, and they went to Austrian border, and then they got across the border, and they got in a Red Cross camp, and then because Uncle Mike was already in Australia, I don't think, you know, they were in the camp about three months or so. 3 to 6 months, I can't remember what the time period was. And then they found, they tracked down my uncle, the Red Cross, you know, in Australia, and they started getting connection, you know, with him. And that's why they chose that destination for her. Well, she went out by plane. Dad went out by ship when he escaped Yugoslavia. Mum went out by plane. They organised a trip. And she ended up going out there. And then Charles ended up escaping too, but he ended up losing contact with Mum, and he ended up in South Africa, of all things. And he remarried this woman. She had 5 children, and he married her he never had a child. I mean, of his own blood. But this woman had 5 children, so they separated because of the 56 revolution. Mum even said, it was funny, that while she was working, like doing street sweeping and collecting bricks and stuff, she was still under the, how they call it, when they were in prison, but working work gangs. Charles would still be part of another work gang. As they were going past, he'd slip her a love note, you know, as they were walking past. And because he started getting networking between the prison guards to try and find out where Mum was, to kind of get his gang to go past theirs. And then when he did, he'd kind of bump her and slip a note in her hand, you know, and stuff like that. So I remember telling that story. You know. And then sadly, I remember she used to talk fondly of the guy, even when we were kids. Oh, you know, that bloody revolution, if only it didn't happen. She had really good memories of him all the time. But she ended up going out to Australia. They lost connection, and then a few years later, she ended up getting a letter because he ended up trying to find her through the Hungarian community and international. I think it was some kind of international group that tracked down the your family history. And anyway, they found, and Mum ended up getting a letter, you know, of him, but he had already remarried with his five kids and this South African woman, and but Mum, obviously by then, was married as well to my dad. And then Mum went out, and she claims her first few, when she went to Australia, she was that depressed, that shocked, you know, all the trauma, that she had locked herself in and didn't want to come out of her room, because she claims Brisbane was like a country town when she came. Like the architecture and design of the city and the atmosphere was like hot, stinking. You can't compare the two cities. The one was like run by royalty, beautiful, but sadly, and then Mum didn't know English. It was just a whole shock to the system, you know, what she had to go through. And then, and the mentality here was very different. Like over there, people were more, I don't know, there was like a noble talk, like a more formal. Here was very informal, the way everybody talked, and then the people were treated bad because they were not English speaking. So you had this, this issue with that. But so it wasn't easy. Anyway, first month she locked herself in and she cried for weeks, for a few months, and then eventually she got grasp of herself. Uncle Mike helped settle her down, and then their first job was actually working at the cannery, Golden Circle Cannery. You know, pineapples. Okay. I don't know what they were doing. Obviously back then there was more manual work there, not all the robotic stuff now. Stacking, doing all the pineapple and fruits that came in the tins and whatever they did back then, juices and stuff. And then she also got a job in a fruit shop, I think, around Spring Hill, working for Hungarian businessmen, business people. But she ended up yeah, they lived at Spring Hill in a kind of apartments where they back then they used to have I believe the bedroom like a washing room under on the ground level where everybody did their washing, and then they had the kitchen separate. So and then you had your rooms kind of throughout the building. So a bit like a hostel, I guess, like you see these days. And so the family was there, and now that's where she met Dad, because Dad, through some other Hungarians, told him that around this time Tuesday night, this Hungarian girl is always down there washing, and he ended up taking his washing down at the same time, and then he met, he did the sweet talking, gifted a gab, and then before you know it, they hooked up and started the Chicos family. Wasn't The game was pretty good for the first 10 or so years, and then after, by the time I was born and realised what was going on, I didn't see a very nice relationship. It's pretty, I didn't really see love between them, because they had grown, the only thing keeping them together was the kids, you know. But, you know, they still kept their composure. It was, Dad was good to us, you know, boys. He, like he taught us all the right things, you know. And Mum, she was a gem, humble, didn't like conflict, soft-spoken. She used to love all the swing, Benny Goodman, all the swing music, you know, even Julio Iglesias, all that kind of stuff. Big repertoire, classic music. Cardo di Kotelin was her favourite Hungarian. But there's a lot of Hungarian albums. And this guy, she's a famous singer back at the time, Putnoki Garbord. She even a few of his records. And she used to write to him, and he used to write back. They used to know each other. And he used to send me stamps all the time, these beautiful, glossy Hungarians, a whole set of, like, they used to come in a sheet. And then you'd have a huge picture, and all the stamps would be in them. I've still got them somewhere in a box somewhere here. And I used to love it. You know, you get these, and she used to write these really long letters, and everything was like handwritten, like back then. And I used to love collecting. You go to a mailbox every day, you get 2, 3 or more. Outside of the bills, you'd be getting letters from relatives and even people around the neighbourhood. You had someone live in the other side of the city, like in Balimba, Wavell Heights. People wrote to each other because you didn't have telephone. You write a letter or postcard. So yeah, it was very common back then. I used to love collecting. We had to fight with my sister and that to get who's going to get the mail out of the post box. It was pretty cool. And then, but Mum also was magic in the kitchen. She used to have all these handwritten recipes of, like, I tell you what, women, when a mum, because I know other family members, other friends and relatives couldn't cook like Mum. Like, I now understand some of the cakes she made, like all kinds of strudels, cakes, and they took a lot of time and effort. Like, she used to knead it, let it rest, and then measure out everything, mix it, and get special ingredients to make it like A1. And we had these like little, they're like like a little croissant shape, but different pastry, and you'd have like walnuts, poppy seed, plum jam, and then you had apricot drops, and oh my God, we had apple and cherry, strudels, cabbage. And then if you want savoury, you had all the cheese and rolls and cottage cheese and vanilla slices, rum cakes, chocolate cakes, you name it. All the effort she went through, and she did it with passion. You know, every time we had gatherings, even throughout the week we'd all have big plates of sweets, and then she was great at making stews, soups, furzelek, which is like there's no substitute in English, but it's like they make like a sauce with peas, with lentils, with potatoes, or all separate, like different vegetables, and then that'd be like complement like pork or sausage or all kinds of stuff. Chicken, we'd have fish, and bean soups, pea soups, chicken soups, carrot soup, mushroom soups, all kinds of soups she used to make. And then when we were sick, she made a special one called adősleves or tojásleves or egg soup. And she'd even put, it'd be very good for your immune system as kids. She'd make, and also she had grandma used to come over 2 times a week. She was a beautiful lady too, very Catholic, very religious. And she was the one who we actually were scared of, because in a way, not in a way that she'd hurt us, more that, we had to behave, because it was a kind of respect we had for her. And Mum kind of let us play up a bit, like when Grandma was there. But when Grandma was there, we had to kind of really pull our socks up and be polite, like more. So, but it was good, because she used to come over, always give us she'd always drop in a Windsor hot bread kitchen and bring us a big sultana. It was like a sultana loaf with cinnamon, sugar on the outside. Oh, it was beautiful. And then big Vienna breads, and we sliced it, and it was kind of melted in your mouth because it was fresh. She'd get off a bus stop, and she was a strong woman, and she loved gardening, all the dill, tomatoes, roses. She'd be hoeing all the time. Any weed, it was kind of. And then she used to do all the cooking and strudels. We used to cycle over and do all the cycling after school, and she'd have like the bread with all kinds of jam, or even liverwurst, with a fancy word for that. If people don't like liver, is pate, but the same thing. And lard, we used to cook with lard. It was kind of, she used to get these tubs of lards and fry everything in it, and it's a lot healthier. But again, you got old people knew all that stupid vegan trash, and the trouble is probably more so the way they grow things these days. Even your fruit and vegetables are not the same as when they used to grow the old way, because they use so much pesticide, and in the way they grow it, they haven't got the same nutrition, because they don't even fertilise the soil like they used to. With manure, they always use this artificial synthetic fertilisers, which is not the same, and you can taste it and smell it, and even the flavours are different compared to years ago. So that's where I think the problem lies too. I remember coming back to Hungary to our family here, Chilla's, my brother's wife's family I stay with, and they had like a garden full of vegetables, fruit trees, apple trees, walnut trees, pear trees, plum trees, apricot trees, and in the middle they had all this area with a row of corn, capsicums, tomatoes, onions, garlic, you name it. And then they had a bench with a grill. And they just, all the fruit and that. I remember going when they cut up the tomatoes and everything. All the flavours of the cooking were likewise. Memories went straight back to the period when I was a kid. Like at home when we were kids. And afterwards, when you go to Coles, Woolworths and all those supermarkets, they might look shiny and good, but all the food is tasteless. You can't, and that's why, and then everybody adds all that stupid additives to get all the flavour, and even that's synthetic. But when you cook with original homegrown vegetables and fruit, and it's just a different scene. You get the stimulation from the senses, your flavours on your taste buds are just out of this world. And I remember going to Chilla's place, and all those childhood memories came back to me, just when they cut up the tomatoes and capsicums and the food. And then I asked Chilla's mother, she goes, she doesn't use any additives, it's all traditionally cooked. Oh, it's just amazing, seriously. So, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, Mum loved the cooking, and she even cooked Sadly, my parents, did divorce when around my 20. When I was 20, I was in the Air Force. She divorced, and we moved in with her. I got out of the Air Force. I moved in with her and my sister, and then we lived together while Dad lived separate. And Mum used to make her cakes for the Dolce Vita coffee shop in Milton Road, Park Road, Milton. And she did some Hungarian cakes there. Not all of them, just a few, about 4 or 5 different types. And also for Lower Shomas, and there was a coffee shop up there. And even the Crown Hotel, she even made these kind of savoury cheese sticks, for, I think she sold it to them a few times. And then they buy it and you have it as bar food, they used to have it at the bar. And so she was always busy. She loved it, kept it busy and occupied, which was good. She loved it, yeah. And I also remember when we were kids growing up, she used to take us into the valley, Fortitude Valley. It was like a city, part of this, just outside Brisbane City. It was like before you went in there, the people that don't realise what Brisbane is. And there they had 2 big department stores and like streets, like it was like different shops all along. And you had like really cool, she used to stop in, and then occasionally, they had the toy stores there in the Valley Plaza and the Myers and that. And we stop in the cafeteria, she'd buy a Vienna coffee, and then she'd get us like a chicken cheese toaster sandwiches. And it was really nice. And then we'd get those donuts, occasionally. So she loved the Vienna coffee. And there was this cake shop called the Eiffel Tower. And the actual guy in there was a Hungarian guy that was baking all the cakes, I remember going there, and he used to always come out and chat to Mum, when we were ordering cakes. And all our birthday cakes come from there, the Dobostorta, the rum cake. Mum used to order. I used to like the Dobostorta, but I really loved the chocolate rum cake. That's why I think I got onto the Bundaberg rum later. I think that's what triggered me. So, the aroma of that rum, oh my God. It was a godsend. And she used to love that egg. It's like an egg liqueur, and it used to be really thick. And she'd drink, like women didn't drink beer or wine like they do now, and the bigger piss heads than guys. They used to have a little. The women used to sit around with little liqueurs, while the men would drink wine or beer, But Dad was never a big drinker anyway. But no one really was in our family. Even when we had visitors, we'd always have the drinks there, but I can't remember anyone getting blind, legless, and stupid, People would kind of have a drink, and we'd eat. We'd always have music going in the background, dancing around the house. And the kids, these are big family gatherings, not like today. And everyone seemed to, everyone agreed to disagree back then, pretty much. And it was more about keeping the family together. Now everyone gets to know they have a joint. You can't even have an opinion, and people, it is crazy. Even if you got an objective opinion, they just don't get it. It's just crazy. I really don't understand how people can't agree to disagree. Because I remember guys with totally different views back then with Dad. Some were really religious. Others might have had more conservative views. Others more liberal. Others more socialist. Others more conservative. It was different. But they still get on. It's weird, really weird. And I remember hearing debates between the people too as a kid. And there was a point where they debate, and if they could learn off each other, it'd be great. And if they didn't, but they knew where the limits were. But these days, everyone's fallen apart in Australia. All our family have just gone on nuts. Really, it's really sad. Can't even have an opinion. You get crucified for it, even if it's researched or objective. And they make up their own little subjective fairy tales. That's good, and it's just crazy. It really is. I just lost for words. But anyway, times have changed in a very, very crazy way. Everybody's self-love. They don't know what love is, but Mum knew conditional love. She suffered for us kids. She suffered big time. She put us, everybody in front of her. That's why everyone loved her. When she had a funeral, church was packed. She knew she had the unconditional. That's how a woman should love, and not put themselves. They have a saying where you have to you shrink while the other people grow. So you don't take the limelight. You have to give the limelight to the next generation coming, but you support that growth. It's a very different mindset than today. Now the old people think they're a 78-year-old person is trying to be a 20, 30-year-old. Fucking taking Viagra and all kinds of trash. It's crazy. Getting all these fucking operations and stuff. And you think people don't grow up gracefully anymore. It's just sad, you know. Really is. But what do you do? That's life. That's life. And then we're not normal anymore that think this way. But the other people have become delusional and subjective and ideological with their stupid. They become norm now. Well, we're the outcasts. But anyway, that's life, and we're going to continue somehow to swallow that trash. But that's life. But anyway, that's it's a bit of a background about Mum in her life. Okay, there's probably a lot of other things I could have mentioned, but these are the things that came to me currently. But she had a very caring, loving. Yeah, you're always busy, like sewing. She sewed all of our clothes. A lot of kids at school used to envy. Like we used to go into like a fabric store up at Lutwich, and in the valley they had a few department stores. You'd be able to pick up a pattern. They have a pattern for like a vest, for a shirt or trousers, and then they come in a little package. And then Mum go, "Oh, which one do you want?" And then they're very cheap. And then you pick up the pattern, and then she'd go, "Oh, come over and select a fabric." And then we'd be able to go over and you pick a different colour fabric, like whatever colour you were, you know, we were still kids. And she'd buy a few metres of it. And you go home and then put the pattern down. And then they're like paper pattern, and then she'd get the white chalk, do it around, and then she'd measure us up, you know. She even had one of those mannequins where you put your clothes on and stuff, or for sewing. And I remember a lot of kids would come and they when you go to school, you know, "Oh, where'd you get that from? You know, where'd you buy that from?" You know, "Oh, my mum made it." You know, they'd kind of check the fabric, like on your trousers. A couple of kids at school, "Oh, that's really good," you know. And sometimes I gave them hand-me-downs, you know, when I grew out from school. I'd give it a couple of kids. The poorer kids, it was interesting. Even the poor kids I got on with, it was like, as long as when you're kids, you don't. Anyway, I didn't. I used to, if they were good, doesn't matter who they were. I used to hate the egotistical, snobby kids. I used to always put them into place anyway. But that's life. But even if they weren't treating me good, I wouldn't. Depends on their character, I guess. But anyway, Mum was a gem, and yeah, it deserves a lot of credit. She's very humble, caring, soft-spoken. So yeah, I take my hat off to her. A lot of people loved her in the family. So anyway, look, I've been talking for over an hour, so I'll leave it at that. And have a good night. And happy birthday, Mum. Lots of love. Miss you heaps. And still have a lot of fond memories of you. All the best. God bless. Look forward to you down the track. But yeah, one day we'll meet again. God bless. Love you.